The China Three Gorges Corporation, or CTG, is one of the biggest energy companies on the planet. It has helped boost China's annual renewable capacity to the largest in the world. Now CTG is increasing investment in Europe too.
The last operation carried out by CTG Europe in Spain is a solar portfolio named Reflection, a PV plant with nearly 500 megawatts in the region of Murcia.
That's the biggest solar plant in the country, part of over $1 billion the company has spent in Spain. CTG received an award for its commitment to decarbonization and new energy cooperation, presented by Cátedra China, a Spanish organization promoting China-Spain cooperation.
We'd like to thank China, Cátedra China for this recognition. China Three Gorges Europe is a good example of a company where there are many co-workers from Spain, China, and other countries working together smoothly. And the CTG is formally committed to the EU energy transition.
Spain's ambassador to China, Marta Betanzos Roig, was also in Madrid at the ceremony.
Solar, wind, offshore, inshore, I mean, it's like, getting into science fiction. We are very much engaged in this kind of new approach to a sustainable economy. I believe that both China and Spain, we can be very complementary.
Spain is positioning itself as a connector country between China and Europe. After Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's official visit to Beijing last year, Spain then abstained on the European Union vote on tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Now China is investing heavily in Spain's goal to become a green energy leader. That includes Chinese electric car battery maker CATL's $4 billion plus investment in a gigafactory in Zaragoza. And the High Green and Envision Group sign off on over $3 billion worth of green hydrogen projects. So as China helps accelerate Europe's green transformation, Spain is fast emerging as a preferred partner. Ken Brown, CGTN.
Massive power outage is crippling large parts of Spain and Portugal. Traffic lights are out, businesses are in the dark, public transportation at a standstill, while crews race to fix the issue that is now impacting a large area all the way from Lisbon to Madrid. NBC News correspondent Danielle Hamamdjian joins us now with more. Danielle, look, officials say that, at least in Spain, it could take up to 10 hours just to get that power fully restored. So how are people surviving in the meantime?
Well, it's sort of I think there's disbelief, there's confusion that this is just so massive because there is just so much mayhem at the moment. Nothing is working. And in the words of the head of Spain's grid operator, it is both extraordinary and exceptional. Now, the Spanish public broadcaster said that this happened shortly after noon, local time, 6 a.m. Eastern. The newsroom was plunged into darkness. The screens went to black. The parliament lost power. Next thing you know, offices were closing, shops were closing. The airport is partially disabled, depending on the area. Some planes are stuck on the ground. Passengers have been told, do not bother coming to the airport right now. Spain's railway operators said that the entire national electricity grid was cut off, and so no trains are arriving or departing from any train station. The Madrid Open tennis tournament matches had to be suspended midway. Players had to walk off. It's going to take 6 to 10 hours to get the power restored. In some cases in Spain, it's already back, but full normalization, officials say, up to a week.
Danielle, when you talk about just waiting a week to get everything back to normal, do we have any sense yet, though, of what caused all this initially?
Yeah, well, top European officials, as well as the Portuguese prime minister, said that at this early stage, they do not believe a cyber attack was behind this. But Portuguese grid officials have said, and bear with me here for a very technical explanation, that this was caused by a rare atmospheric phenomenon that, due to extreme temperature variations, there were, quote, anomalous oscillations in the very high voltage lines. Essentially, there was a very complex domino effect that knocked out power in what is an interconnected power network throughout Europe.
All right, Danielle Hamamdjian for us there. Danielle, thank you.
En el metro y la cobertura. Justo en Gregorio Marañón. Y nada, tenemos información de nada y la cobertura y todo también se ha ido.
Hey guys, it's Mary Main.
And this breaking news that's coming in as we are speaking, there is a power blackout, massive power outrage in major countries of Europe that has been seen. This is seen in the countries of France, Spain and Belgium. Airports, subways have also been impacted with this. We're also being told as we are speaking that there's a massive outage. Residents in Spain, Portugal, France, Belgium report major outages. Airport and subways have been shut down. Communication networks have been hit. I also want to go across to my colleague, executive editor, political editor Aishwarya, joining us on the story. Massive power outage in Europe, and we're getting more details on that. We're also getting more details on what really has happened. Massive power outage in Europe. We're also getting you the cities that is maximum being seen this on. This is in residents of Spain. All right, residents in Spain, Portugal, France and Belgium report the major outages. Airports and subways have been shut down. We're showing you the pictures there. Communication networks are hit. Madrid's Bajaras airport is out of service. El Mundo has reported that. No official cause is confirmed yet. There is chaos that is there. Subways and airports have shut down the streets. It's not only in Spain and Portugal, but we're also being told it's in other parts of France, Netherlands, Belgium. And not all countries have confirmed this. We have to see whether this is some sort of an attack, cyber attack or what. The metro is not working in Madrid and Barcelona is confirmed. There is a traffic collapse there. Telephone lines across Spain are down. Madrid airport is without power. The Spanish state operator said the power outage could have been caused by a failure in the electric grid. So we're coming to know more details on that. But we're also getting you pictures of this. This is Madrid's Bajaras airport that is out of service, we're being told. And this is an update that is taking place at the Madrid Open, has been down for an hour without any identification. And massive power outage across Spain and Portugal on Monday, leaving millions without electricity. They indicate the issue with the European electric grid. Metro lines have stopped in these countries. Internet and telephone connections have largely been cut off. I want to go across to my colleague Niranjan joining us. Niranjan, very clearly a massive power outage in major countries of Europe.
Well, this is very mysterious. It's a big blackout across different countries, especially in Western Europe. The countries that are affected include Spain, Portugal, Andorra, parts of France as well. And from the reports coming in the entire Spanish rail network has faced complete disruption from this power outage, with officials, struggling to restore the electricity for the last almost over 1 to 1.5 hours. And this is we're hearing of partial to full outage in different parts of Europe. This has affected Spain, Portugal, France, and no immediate resolution in sight is what we are picking up from different media reports in Europe. The blackout has also disrupted electricity supply in major cities, including Madrid. Some of the big cities hit, including Madrid, Valencia, Barcelona, as well as communication networks impacting internet, mobile services across these affected regions. Government authorities also also, have not yet issued a statement, though Spanish Ministry of Interior has urged public to remain calm while investigation is underway. Spain seems to be one of the worst affected countries, with almost entire rail network in Spain, coming to a standstill. And a preliminary investigation and report suggesting that the outage may stem from a failure in the interconnected European power grid. It appears to be a failure in the interconnected European power grid, potentially exacerbated by recent high demand and integration challenges with renewable energy sources. Energy experts in Europe noting that the European network of transmission system operators, who are also called ENTSO, are working to stabilize the grid and restore full service. Reports indicating that there is huge concerns, especially with people on a busy Monday trying to move to different parts of these affected countries, including Spain and parts of France, of course, hit, and Portugal as well. These are the worst affected. Back to you for now, Rhythm.
Thank you, Niranjan, for giving us those details. Most parts of Spain, Portugal currently without power, France, Germany. And I'm just going to explain this, Niranjan, for our viewers. Massive power outage in Europe. The airports and subways have also been affected. This is mostly in parts of Spain and Portugal, which are without power, but also France, Germany, and other nations suffering for blackouts. The cause is unknown. This is Madrid's metro station, which we are showing you on the right side. On the left side, there's the power outage in the cities of Europe and subways also of Europe. There is whole countries are also going into some...
Massive power cuts in Spain and Portugal have caused chaos, with trains unable to run, phone services out, and tens of millions of people impacted. Now, some power is slowly coming back on in parts of the Iberian Peninsula, but it's unclear yet how long it will take for it to be fully restored, with warnings it may be up to a week. Joining me now to discuss this is Keith Bell, a professor at the University of Strathclyde. Professor Bell, let me just ask first of all, how rare is a mass outage like this?
Fortunately, very rare. It does happen, I think, typically somewhere in the world, once or twice a year, but that's only somewhere. It's never happened in this country, touch wood. It's been pretty rare in Europe. The last kind of big disturbance that I can remember was the Italian system going down in 2003. Actually, just a month before that, 50 million people in the northeastern US lost supplies. So it's a rare event. It's unfortunate. It's a rare event. System operators do a lot to try, obviously, to avoid this sort of thing happening. There are well-developed procedures developed over decades, sophisticated software tools used to simulate how the system behaves. But they'll be looking at lots and lots of what-if scenarios. If this happened, what would be the consequence? And then they'll adjust things to make sure there are no adverse consequences. When there is a big disturbance somewhere, there will be a lot of lessons learned and shared globally, actually. Although every event is different, and you can't sort of say, okay, well, that would exactly translate to our circumstances. There's always something that you can look at and learn from, and just reflect on your own procedures and systems, and make sure that your things are as robust as you would expect them to be.
Look, Portugal is saying that extreme temperature variations in Spain could have caused the outage in what they're calling a rare atmospheric phenomenon. Have you ever heard of something like that before?
Imagine making $453,000 in a single month as an affiliate marketer without relying on Google, Facebook, or ClickBank, or creating new accounts on Pinterest, Twitter, TikTok, or Instagram.
I don't know exactly what they're getting at. It doesn't give us a huge amount of detail about quite what they're referring to. It is certainly true that the weather and changes to weather, or storms, lightning strikes, extreme temperatures, they all affect power systems, and they affect them in different ways. So yeah, we have to wait and see exactly what they're getting at and get a bit more information from them.
You mentioned that the weather has been a cause in the past. What have other causes been of these kind of mass outages?
There can be equipment failures that are compounded by other equipment, or automatic things that are supposed to respond to limit the impact of the first thing, that for some reason doesn't work, or doesn't work in the way that was intended. So, things can cascade. This is why I say, kind of a power system is a very large, extremely complex, single interconnected system. That, in a way, it's amazing that it operates as reliably as it does, and that's thanks to, as I say, experience and the design of how it works. So we can never say never in terms of a major outage, and quite often it is a compounding of effects. Multiple things revealed happened at the same time. And so in those cases, you want backup systems to be in place to limit the impact.
So there would have been backup systems in place in Spain, in Portugal, but they seem not to have worked. What could be the reasons behind that?
So I don't know exactly how bad it's got. I mean, some of the reports that I've seen suggest that roughly half, maybe a bit more than half, of demand on the Iberian Peninsula has been disconnected. So it could be that some of these backup systems have worked, and they've been the reason why that's been disconnected. The good news then, I suppose, is the rest of it is still there, and there are still connections into France. So that gives the opportunity then, the potential to restore that demand relatively quickly. It's better to have a partial shutdown than a complete shutdown. That becomes a very complex, difficult process. But even then, system operators would be practicing those procedures, working through the systems and the communications and what have you, to try and get that to happen as quickly as possible. But that's not a simple process. So having some of the system already going can resupply the bits that have been disconnected, and hopefully can do that relatively quickly.
And in the power operator HQs, what will they be doing now? Because this is obviously such a significant disruption for their millions, tens of millions of customers.
Absolutely. So they will be trying to work out, get a reasonable idea of what's happened, because they don't want to reconnect demand and then trigger whatever it was to happen again. They're trying to establish, is this a temporary thing? It's gone away. And they'll be kind of working out, what are the stages, how quickly they can restore different blocks of demand, what generators are available to come on to match that, and kind of getting the matching of generation and demand step by step. Reconnect some, see that everything is stable, then go to the next stage. So, just making sure that all of their monitoring is in place. They'll be kind of updating their software simulation scenarios to see, the situation that they're in now, and as they kind of restore demand, that everything is likely to still be okay. And there's a lot of, they won't have experienced a big loss like this, but there will be a lot of experience sitting there in the control room as well, able to sort of see what the monitoring that's going on and be able to make judgments about at least the first priorities.
And we've had a number of different predictions, from a number of hours to a number of days, potentially a week, for these systems to get back up and running. How long can this take, though?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. It depends exactly what's happened. There's the reports that you've seen, that I've seen as well, of what the Portuguese system operator is supposed to have said. I haven't seen the original report. I think the quote that I've seen was talking about the system becoming normalized again across some days. So what they mean by normalized, I'm not quite sure. It might mean that they expect to get demand back and reconnected, but that whatever, if it's down to the weather, maybe they're referring to how quickly the weather is going to be changing and getting to a different sort of weather system coming in and sitting over the peninsula. I don't know. So I've also seen someone else has reported that the Spanish system operator is saying, okay, maybe take up to 10 hours to get everybody back. So hopefully that's more the reality of it, that it's no more than a number of hours, a few hours. So demand will be being restored in the course of that. So it's like, I think, if up to 10 hours means the last few chunks might take as long as 10 hours, but other people getting back in the meantime. And, key energy users in the interim should have backup systems, and those backup systems should be working, such as, hospitals, water treatment works, chemical plant. They should all have their own standby generators, typically diesels. That fortunately they don't have to be used very often, but they're there just in case. And they should have, enough fuel for a good number of hours, maybe up to 24 hours of operation to keep things going. I mean, and in a hospital, it might not be for everything to be able to work for 24 hours. So this is maybe where some services need to be prioritized. And And it's important then for the system operator to communicate very well with everybody else about what the situation is, how quickly they expect to be able to get everything back. So that if you are in a situation of being, you know, let's say a hospital manager, and you've got a certain amount of fuel, you know, when can you expect things to be restarted? Do you have to ration things in the meantime or not? So yeah, communication is really important, I think, from the system operator, as well as the engineers doing their job and getting a full understanding of what the situation is right now and how quickly they'll be able to get things back.
Well, Professor Bell, we will see how much longer it takes for them to get power online and what any investigation, what conclusion any investigation comes to. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
We a little anyway speculated on whether some kind of foul play was part of it, and that is now being investigated one way or another. We'll find out. But this is such a huge scale failure. You do have to wonder what the heck could have caused it.
Well, it is all too easy when these things happen to immediately imagine that the work perhaps of some foreign power might be behind this. I think that's probably, there's more chance of that being the case in this situation, because you can imagine critical national infrastructure like this in both Spain and in Portugal, there will be multiple fail-safe protections, and those appear comprehensively to have failed, and it's led to absolute misery for millions of people, including a good number of British travellers.
And I would imagine a great deal of concern for parents whose kids are at school, because again, you know, if your school is around the corner from you, fine, you go and collect your kid, you come back. But lots of older children travel good distances on buses, trains, trams to get to school, and it looks as though they might not be able to get home for hours and hours on end.
Oh, sure. Really serious concerns. All of this stuff, we are so dependent on urban transport to run normally. If it suddenly shuts down, then there are all manner of mayhem, stress, upset, risk. It's a horrible situation.
Portugal's national grid operator says that a rare atmospheric phenomenon is behind a major power outage that's affected large parts of that country as well as Spain. Footage from the Spanish capital Madrid shows chaotic scenes at junctions as traffic lights have been knocked out. The Spanish state railway firm, Renfe, says the outage is national. All trains have been cancelled and people have been forced to evacuate from the Madrid underground system. The national grid operator in Spain, Red Electricidad, says it's working to restore power, but it could take many, many hours to come back online. Well, play was suspended at Madrid Open, forcing the game between Grigor Dimitrov and Jacob Fernley to be stopped. Scoreboards went dark and some cameras lost power. Not that one. Well, this is a station in Lisbon where the power outage led to darkness underground, of course. Portuguese police say that the metro has been closed in both Lisbon and Porto too. Well, some of the cities affected by this, Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia and Seville in Spain, as well as Lisbon, Faro and Porto in Portugal. Andorra and parts of France have also seen some effects. Well, let's bring in our science and technology editor, Tom Clark, for some more on this. Afternoon to you, Tom. Good to have you here, because there are some words here that you're going to need you to explain to me. Anomalous oscillations have led to a phenomenon known as induced atmospheric vibration.
Yes, it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? And I think we should bear in mind at the moment that is information coming from Portugal's power grid operator. It hasn't yet been confirmed by the Spanish grid authorities. And I would say at this stage, it is unlikely that one single event when one thing might have precipitated this grid collapse, but it's likely that more than one thing went wrong, because a power grid failure of this scale, and we're still waiting to find out how many people have been affected, but you were just listing some of Europe's largest cities there across Spain and Portugal. This is quite possibly the largest outage we've seen in Europe, maybe not in history, but certainly for a very long time. And things like that don't happen for no reason. And these grids are engineered to be as reliable and dependable as possible, because they are, and I think we take them for granted while they're working. We don't realise just how much of a kind of plate spinning act keeping a large grid system, and this is a very large grid system that Spain operates across the whole of the Iberian Peninsula, some of it connected to, as you were saying there, directly to Portugal, also interconnectors to part of France, and it also supplies all of Spain's island nations as well, around the mainland Spain. It's a very, very large grid. And this is about a grid operator's worst nightmare. Not quite the worst, because what we saw at about 12:30 Spanish time was about half, based on their sort of power demand, disappear from the grid. So they've got half their power grid still working, and that's crucial, because that means they've got power to put back onto the grid to help restore the balance. And it's all about balance. I'm going to come on to that in a second, but it's not a black start scenario, which is the real nightmare, and that's when you've got no power at all, even to get your power stations running again. That's something that affected Cuba, if you remember, for several weeks quite recently. So at least they've got power in Spain, but getting back onto the grid is no easy feat. And with every hour that goes by now, it gets harder. So first of all, why? Well, a power grid works, as you probably know, on alternating current AC. It comes out of our plugs. Alternating current, though, runs at a very specific frequency. Here in the UK and in Spain, it's 50 hertz. If it drops even a few hertz below 50, 48.5, 47, things start to go wrong. Things start to trip. And the reason the frequency might either fall or rise is if there is a sudden drop in either demand or supply of power. So something's obviously happened here. There was a sudden drop or increase in power supply or demand. That could have been caused, yes, by induced atmospheric variation on a power line between Portugal and Spain. Hypothetical scenario, let's say because of that, Portugal suddenly drops off Spain's grid. That's so the entire electricity demand from Portugal goes away, frequency drops massively, then Spain's power stations start to shut themselves down to protect their turbines from spinning too fast and blowing up the power plants. So all these trips are in there to prevent that from happening. Now they've got to build that power back up. But because the grid's now off, they don't know how much demand there is out there. Who left their air conditioner on? Which hospitals are running on backup generation, which don't? That is a very difficult task to do. And what grid operators will be doing in this scenario is very carefully switching on small components of the grid bit by bit. And that involves making phone calls to people between controllers and engineers in those control rooms, and very gradually putting bits of the grid back together. Get one power plant up and running, one small area of the grid up and running, and then move on to the next one. And it can take, as the power company in Spain has indicated, the grid operator in Spain, I should say, that could take 10 hours. But things can also go wrong. You can have everything can trip. You can have another power outage, and you have to start from scratch again. Another problem, if it goes much beyond 12 hours, some people are suggesting, and this is certainly a problem that is known about, local substations that supply neighbourhoods have their own batteries to tide things over and help restart local grids in the case of power outages and make them easier to restore more quickly. Those batteries start to run down relatively quickly. If the outage continues for a while and those batteries drain, then it's even more of a challenge to get grids up and running. And just to throw this into the mix, although there's been some word out there that this is because Spain has a very renewables-dominated grid, a lot of solar and wind energy on there, that wouldn't have been the cause of a power outage because of the way these grids are integrated and the types of technology they put on there to regulate the frequency of the current. But it's true, a large amount of Spain's generation is from solar power. That will be, as the sun sets, that will be going offline. They've got less power to draw on, although it possibly could make it easier not having that supply there. But anyway, there'll be grid engineers across Spain right now sweating profusely, partly because their air conditioning's gone out, but partly because they've got a lot of work to do to try and get this very finely tuned plate spinning act of getting all of those frequencies of electricity back synchronized and in, singing like a choir all at the same note in order to get the grid back up and running.
Great stuff. Tom Clark there, our science and technology editor, explaining it very clearly to us. Tom, really appreciate that.
Ford is energy, sir. Talk to me what happened in Portugal and Spain today. Is that a foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the United States of America?
Well, it is. You appear to have about 6 million people in key cities in Spain, Portugal, and now France out of power for an elongated period. We're not quite sure why. There's some rumors about a spatial event with solar flares, but you know what? That doesn't affect just a tiny weeny area like Spain and Portugal. If that were true, that would broadcast over a very large area. Well, it hasn't. It looks like this is about their generation system. How does this affect us here? Spain over. Affect us here. Spain over time has accepted the notion for the whole Iberian Peninsula of all solar, all wind. They're about 50% of their electricity is now produced that way, 65% of their installed capacity. It doesn't work at night. It doesn't work at night. It doesn't work when it's cloudy. So therefore, you've got like capacity factor is maybe 25%, meaning 75% of the time that doesn't work. They've now announced the shutdown of their last 2 coal plants and all 7 of their nuclear power plants. Over the next 10 years, they will have no nighttime power effectively. The batteries don't solve that. By the way, all of the battery power and solar panels come from, guess who? From China. They're very committed to that. This is what you wind up with. Translate this to the United States of America. In 2012, electricity reserve margins here averaged 25%. We produced more than we needed to take care of the peak times of summer and winter when it's hottest and coldest. Reserve margins have collapsed to 14.5% now, only in about 18 years because of the mass adoption of these part-time technologies that cost 3 times the money. And yeah, batteries are great, but they all come from China. Solar panels all come from China. We're taking in power generation resources that cost 11 times more than basic gas-fired electric power. In solar, about 3 times more costly. Battery storage, about 11 times more costly. And it all comes from China, and we're incentivizing that. $42 billion a year of Biden-IRA incentives that continue to this day and are not being attacked in this version of the budget. And then B, makers inside the IRS tax code, accelerated depreciation on this stuff, 5-year lives, massively accelerated depreciation schedules, another 11 billion of subsidies that way, or Chinese-sourced solar panels. 87% of those in the world are made in China. 87% of batteries in the world are made in China. Utility scale battery storage.
Hang on. Whoa. Are you saying that we, the taxpayer, are subsidizing that? That's not subsidy coming from us.
Yes. We're subsidizing companies like Sarah. Yes.
Slow down.
Yes.
Slow down. Hit rewind. I want to make sure this flows over people on a Monday morning. Give me that again.
The ITC, investment tax credit, production tax credit, and accelerated depreciation subsidies to wind, solar, and battery storage extended in the Biden IRA that were existent all the last 12 years, including this same administration last time. Those incentives were all there then. Continue and cost taxpayers $42 billion a year. The tax subsidy portion in depreciation schedules, accelerating depreciation for tax on this stuff, allows another $10 billion a year. So $52 billion a year in subsidizing part-time, massively expensive energy sources for electricity that come from China. Battery storage and solar panels.
And hang on, but also not just the, it's not part of the base load, but the manufacturing takes place in China. So it's $52 billion we're not getting in tax revenues because we're given a subsidy to support manufacturing jobs in China, correct?
Correct. Now, the way forward to slow this down was the tariffs. Yeah. Unfortunately, 2 Saturdays ago, we let China off the hook on battery storage and thin film PV and batteries. Yeah. Were exempted from the tariffs for the time being. A timeout. Timeout was declared. Yeah. That was a huge mistake because that was the only way forward. It wasn't a blink, but maybe it was a wink. Right? No, we got to get that whole thing sorted because that's the counter to the no rare earths, no magnets, no ball bearings, all that. Correct? That was kind of a wink. That's going to get sorted. But the energy cost that kind of equipment produces here, Spain, for example, 32 cents a kilowatt hour, 2.2 times more costly electricity than here, all because they've decided over time to build this second system, new system on top of the existing one you must have run at night and when it's cloudy, called solar and battery storage, that basically doubles the cost of electricity. At 35 cents a kilowatt, you won't have any short manufacturing here. It won't happen.
They're all in the cult. They're all in the cult of decarbonization. And you know how funny that cult is? I'm going to show you how funny that cult is. Do you hear any mention of that? Do you hear Green New Deal? Do you hear Green thing? Oh, no. Once the oligarch tech bros, the progressive oligarch tech bros, realize they need power to the 10th degree in the United States, you don't hear anything else about climate change or global warming. It's all about AI, and we gotta do the full muscle, right? The Western approach, not the deep seek. Am I correct on that, Dave Walsh? You don't hear much talk about decarbonization anymore.
Yes, but Steve, the people in the populist movement need their fridges on at night. They need their air conditioning on it. They need their computers on. Mine didn't work this morning. At night and in the day. And in the day. It's the same for them, too, not just the tech oligarchs. We all need baseload, continuous duty, abundantly low-cost electricity.
Oh, no, I'm not saying we don't need it. I'm saying they knew it. When it came to something they had to have, all of a sudden, they left the cult of decarbonization. Yes. Dave, we got to bounce. This is amazing. I'm going to try to get you back on. This 100-day thing's got me jammed up, but we got to get you back on this week to go through all of it. Where's your social media in the interim?
Thank you. At Dave Walsh Energy on X, True Social, and Getter. Thank you.
Well, okay, and welcome to Investigate Everything. This is an episode I prepared yesterday, but some technical difficulties, as you saw tonight, maybe a solar flare or oscillating atmospheric phenomenon messed up my system, so I couldn't quite transmit the way I wanted to. My name is Brian O'Shea. I am your host for Investigate Everything at dailyclout.io show. Please go to dailyclout.io and check out all the great shows over there. Okay, so yesterday's blackout. Let's just get right into it. We're investigating it. Welcome, everyone. I need to put on my glasses so I can read your tiny chats. Let me see. So I just want to say welcome to Liberty quadruple O, atmospheric phenomenon. Yeah, exactly. And you know what's funny about that, those explanations, Liberty, is when you see them coming into this argument about the the blackout, it's so clear that that's the climate change push as usual. Because if you go on to read more and more articles, and I've got a few I'm going to put up here in a second, there's so many of them, especially from the EU, from the usual left, but a lot that originated out of China, talking about like, see, this is climate change. So, and I talk about this in my summary of this article. So let me just read the summary to everyone, just so we all know where we're going tonight. We're going to be following this story like many other investigations. I think, let me see, Cousin Ernie, if you're there, what do we got? Like 11 open investigations right now. What I said in my write-up, and you can find this on Rumble, and please follow when you go over there. I said, go green, go dark. The Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain, Portugal, small parts of several other countries like France, experienced a massive energy blackout. CCP-friendly news outlets like Dimsum Daily, run by a Malaysian CCP kind of like propagandist, who was actually on the run for fraud back in the day. And other Chinese Communist Party media-Muppets were quick to blame the blackout on rare atmospheric phenomenon, while other useful idiots doubled down on climate change as the reason behind this event. They even have a fancy name for it, induced atmospheric event, which basically translates into it's your fault for not taking climate change seriously. Okay, that aside. But don't you find it strange that every time a major part of country's infrastructure fails, you can always find the same two suspects somewhere in the mix behind the mess? China and green energy. So is one of these things to blame on the Iberian blackout, or both? Or are they both one and the same in terms of threats to infrastructures around the globe as part of China's unrestricted warfare against the world? Tonight, we will explore what led to the blackout and the CCP's involvement in both Spanish energy infrastructure and their involvement in helping countries around the world transition to green energy. Do they really care about the planet, or is the green energy transition movement no more than an emerald-colored CCP Trojan horse put in place to destroy energy infrastructure so they can benefit, they being the CCP, in some way from the chaos that always follows the collapse of a country's infrastructure? As an example of that, Sri Lanka back in 2023, they also went to green energy. What happened to Sri Lanka? The entire grid collapsed. The population went crazy. The president fled on a helicopter. They're in the Belt and Road that China is in charge of as well. Also, we start exploring the why. And this is the most important thing in any investigation, is the why. You know, the victims are important. The possible suspects are important. Sometimes you don't have those. Sometimes you got to start with the why. Why, assuming this is intentional attack, would someone switch off the lights in Spain, which affects pretty much that entire peninsula? If this was an attack on Spain and Portugal's infrastructures, why would the CCP want to do such a thing to two countries who are quite aligned with China on most of their strategic initiatives? Was this the warning Xi Jinping gave countries? Was this due to the warning Xi Jinping gave to countries just last week to not align with the United States in the ongoing tariff war? Or was this a warning to President Trump to not mess with China, or we will collapse your power grid? Don't forget that many of the states in our country are already in bed with China on green energy deals, such as, but not limited to, and with no surprise, Oregon, California, New York, to name a few. We're going to dive into this and more. And let's assume this was an intentional show of force by China. In the words of Qi Lang and Wang Yangsu themselves, the two authors of the CCP War Manifesto or Strategy Manifesto, published by the People's Liberation Army Press in 1999 Beijing, such an attack on one's enemy admittedly does not attain to the domain spoken of by Sun Tzu, wherein the, quote, other army is subdued without fighting. However, it can be considered to be subduing the other army through clever operations. That is a direct quote from Unrestricted Warfare. I'll put up the whole quote in a second. So, was this an attack? Who knows? We probably will never know. But here's what we do know about this relationship. What we do know about this relationship is China has huge influence over the power grid over there. Here's an example. They're deeply in bed with Portugal, and they are also deeply in bed with Spain. Here's an example of how close those ties are with Spain. In 2023, around, I want to say March, Spain, probably April, Spain suddenly said, out of the blue, Palestine's a state. We see Palestine as a state. 2 weeks before that, China had just sent Spain billions of dollars to rebuild their infrastructure, to strengthen their energy infrastructure. Okay, how's Portugal fit in here? Well, Portugal and Spain is kind of like, if you've ever been to Portugal, I was actually just there like 2 weeks ago. But if you've ever been to Portugal and you drive outside of Lisbon or any of the major cities, there are power lines all over that country. It's actually quite ugly. It's a beautiful country, ugly power lines. They're all interconnected. That's the thing. The entire the entire EU is kind of all connected on a grid that borrows from each other on kind of an AC or alternate current type formula. So what that means is if one country is not using as much power, and another country needs more power, kind of sends it back and forth. So the theory on what caused the blackout, which makes sense, is that Portugal suddenly had a sudden drop in power intake from Spain. Like they stopped taking power all of a sudden. Spain's grid overcompensated for this, getting overloaded basically, which blew out all the lights in Portugal and Spain and, Andorra and some parts of even France and Germany. The thing to look at is what could cause that sudden zero demand for power in Portugal. Okay. Well, the way their system works is they've kind of started switching to something called an energy internet or internet energy. Basically, everything's controlled via a kind of like an internet for the power grid. That internet, not the power grid, but that internet is connected to China. Okay, let's go back to the why. All right, the why. Why would China do this if Spain's such a good ally? Well, let's just look at what's happened up till then. All right, share this screen with you. By the way, sorry about that earlier. Little snafu. We're trying to get on a new system, and I thought I had it figured out, but I couldn't figure out how to get the sound to transfer. So it's a new broadcast system, but we'll figure it out eventually. It'll be cool. It's a cool little system. It's a steep learning curve. I'll just put it that way. Okay, so let me see here. Pull up this source. Okay, so this is April 11th. Okay. And so on April 11th, I can get this thing to come up. All right, let's try that again. All right. So basically on April 11th, what happened was Spain went ahead and met with China to talk about many things. One of those was China wants to import a ton of pork back there on April 11th from China. And, Spain was negotiating as one does. But China's biggest concern with the EU is he's been telling the EU over and over, do not support the US in this tariff war or there will be consequences. And that's pretty much how they've said it. So AOL News reports, originally from Reuters, China says EU must oppose tariff bullying. Xi tells Spanish Prime Minister on April 11th. President Xi Jinping told Spain's Prime Minister on Friday, the 11th, that China and the European Union must join together in defending globalization and opposing unilateral acts of bullying. Never mind the fact that they tariff the hell out of us, way more than they still way more than we do anyways. In a clear swipe at President Donald Trump's tariff policies. Xi, in his first public comments on the issue since Trump launched his tariff offensive last week, I would argue it's a tariff defensive, but that's just my opinion, said there could be no winners in any trade war. And he said the EU had a key role to play in ensuring global economic stability. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said China and the U.S. needed to hold talks to defuse the situation, and he also called for a more balanced relationship between Beijing and the 27-nation EU, which has its own trade issues with China. China's always regarded the EU as an important pole in a multipolar world, and is one of the major countries firmly supporting the EU's unity and growth. Xi told Sanchez during their talks in Beijing, according to Xinhua News Agency, which is their Ministry of Propaganda. China and the EU should fulfill their international responsibilities jointly safeguard the trend of economic globalization and the international trade environment, and jointly oppose unilateral acts of bullying, Xi added. I just want to note that if you've ever seen a meeting with Xi Jinping and some of these European leaders, the meeting itself is an act of bullying. They are terrified of him. Look at the way he dressed down Justin Trudeau of Canada just last year in front of everyone. It was sad to watch. In a stunning reversal, Trump said on Wednesday he would temporarily lower hefty duties he had just imposed on dozens of countries, including the EU 27, for 90 days. So you could see the negotiation going back and forth. You know, it's carrot and stick. Okay, and that's typical Trump. Big opening on the negotiation, and then you negotiate down. That's classic business negotiations. Then he jumped, but at the same time he lowered them for the EU. He raised them for China to over 145%. So you know the rest. Going back to Xi Jinping, Xi said there's no winners in the tariff war, prompting the Spanish leader to say trade wars aren't good. The world needs China and the U.S. to talk. China doesn't like it when someone like the Spanish, the Spanish prime minister doesn't say what he wants. What China wants to hear from the Spanish prime minister is, yes, Xi, we agree with you. All hail the mighty Xi. He doesn't like this kind of sitting on the fence type language, clearly. Sanchez's trip to Beijing, his third in as many years, aims to forge closer economic and political ties with China amid the global fallout from Trump's tariff policy, seeking to position Spain as an interlocutor between China and the EU and attract more Chinese investment. Spanish officials have rejected the U.S. warning that moving closer to the Asian country would be, quote, cutting your throat. And Trump is right. President Trump is right. We believe there are opportunities to deepen relations, but it's important that China shows sensitivity to European demands for more balanced relations, Sanchez said, referring to the EU's trade deficit with Beijing, which last year exceeded $300 billion trade deficit. The EU describes China as a partner for cooperation and an economic competitor and systemic rival, whatever the hell that means. All right, you know the rest. So basically, they're having these talks. Well, there are other talks that they're having as well. So one of the other talks they were having was there's a lot of votes that have been going through the EU to basically sanction China in some respects. So 11 days later, China urges the UK, reported by Reuters on April 22nd, 2025, just a week ago. China urges UK and EU to uphold multilateral trade in the face of U.S. tariffs. Chinese Minister Wang Yi participates in press conference in Beijing, China, 27 March 2025. By the way, Wang Yi is like the meanest looking ambassador in the world. That dude's like, he's a tough hombre. So once he gets involved, things are getting really serious. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi urged Britain and European Union on Tuesday to safeguard multilateral trading systems as Beijing seeks to rally support from trading partners to counter U.S. tariff measures. China and the United States have remained locked in a deepening trade war in tit-for-tat tariffs, blah, blah, blah. The United States has weaponized tariffs to launch indiscriminate attacks on countries, openly violating WTO rules and undermining the legitimate rights and interests of countries. China's foreign minister cited Wang as saying in a phone call from the British, between him and the Brits, China and Britain had a responsibility to uphold international order in the face of rampant unilateral bullying. China was ready to work with Britain and eliminate all distractions, Wang said, adding that the onus was on both countries to safeguard multilateral trading systems. China sounds scared, is what they sound to me. When they get scared, they get mean. In a separate call with the Austrian foreign minister, Beetmain Reisinger, Wang called on the EU to defend multilateral trade and said China was willing to further strengthen high-level exchanges with the bloc. Okay. It goes on. So basically, in a nutshell, they called everyone in the EU and said, "Don't you support us? You don't support Washington." And the big reason China has this leverage over the EU is because almost the entire EU is involved in the Belt and Road. What is the Belt and Road? or One Belt, One Road. That is a China kind of toxic financing scheme where they come and they give you these huge loans to help you build out your infrastructure, whether that's energy, transportation, what have you. And you kind of don't have to pay it back. But here's the thing. You kind of have to answer to China. So, for instance, in some African countries who took the money and let China build out their like oil infrastructure, one of the things in the small print with the Belt and Road is, hey, man, we're going to help you out. All this is all great. You're all going to have jobs. Never happens. They build it out, but people don't get jobs. They just bring in more Chinese engineers. And you have to protect that infrastructure. Now, if you don't, in a lot of cases, China will deploy the People's Liberation Army to secure it for you. That has happened in Nigeria, Djibouti, several other countries. I believe it's Nigerian International Airport is actually owned by the People's Republic of China now for some snafu with negotiation deals. So there's that. Okay, so what am I getting at here? What I'm getting at is it's really weird. If you go to today's news, it's really weird that no one seems to know what caused this power outage. It's like someone flipped a switch and flipped it back on. Spain and Portugal, this is today from The Guardian, Spain and Portugal power outage. What caused it? And was there a cyber attack? Several countries in Europe have been scrambling to restore electricity after huge power cut caused blackouts. It's interesting. I just want to point out they're calling it a power cut now, not a blackout. Blackout indicates an accident. A cut means kind of like, it was cut, like power was cut. So what I wanted to get, so here you see REN, who is the Spain's electric network, also Portugal's. Red Electricidad de España, Spain's electric network, said Spain and Portugal were hit by El Cero, which means the zero. Its Portuguese counterpart, Redes Energéticas Naciones, I don't speak Portuguese, said the outage started at 11:30 a.m. Western European summertime. By midsummer afternoon, Spanish operator, which is partly state-owned, said it had started to recover voltage in the north. Okay, we won't go into the details. Portuguese Prime Minister Luis Montenegro said the issue originated in Spain. Spain's REE did not make any statements on the causes of the blackout. Now, remember, originally they said it was due to the sudden lack of demand from Portugal. Now they're saying it originated in Spain. Spain's not commenting. Spain's probably not allowed to comment. Okay, so here's the latest excuse. Due to the variation of the temperature, the parameters of the conductor change slightly, said Taco Angliar, the managing director at NERA, a software provider to the energy utilities. And let me just make a note of that one. If you guys would make a note of that, I'm going to pop it in the chat. That is something that is kind of like something to check out. Pop that into the chat right there. We need to investigate that software company. Vibration causes something. Okay, so he goes on to say basically, it's sudden change in temperature and things flex and pop and fall apart. Here's the only problem. There were no big temperature fluctuations in Spain or Portugal in the last month. It's been a pretty mild start to the summer so far. So that's just BS. Okay, he goes on, but what's interesting here is this is a great map showing the interconnectivity in the EU and the UK. They're all connected. You guys see that? They're all connected. Okay, could have been foul play. European Union President Antonio Costa, who was Portugal's prime minister from 2015 to 2024, keep those dates in mind, said there's no evidence it was a cyber attack, but cautioned that the ultimate cause is still unclear. Well, they just began the investigation today, so of course there's no evidence because they just started investigating it today. So he's not lying, but he's pretty tricky wording there. A senior European Commission Vice President, Teresa Ribera, also told Spain's Radio 5 that there was no evidence of a deliberate act having caused the outage. Again, because there hasn't been an investigation yet. And you notice it's the EU people commenting on this. You're not really getting much from Spain at this point. However, Spain's National Security Council was convened on Monday to assess the outage. Portugal's prime minister said it was too early to say for sure what was the cause of the blackout. So none of these people are on the same script right now. The EU is saying no foul play, total anomaly, blah, blah, blah. Here's where they defend the renewables. Spain is on its way to being a green energy leader. It has abundant sun and wind. Last year was a record period for renewable power generation, which accounted for 56% of all electricity used. By 2030, that proportion will rise to 81%. I doubt it. Okay, and 56% is the key word. Like Dave Walsh said, that guy's an energy expert, the guy in the Bannon show. Definitely follow him. 56%, you still got to think about the other 44%. And 56% of energy is really, they're not talking about energy generated. If you read what they're saying here, they say last year was a record period for renewable power generation. Okay, but then they change really the direct object here when they say, which accounted for 56% of all electricity used. You see what they did there? They're talking about energy that was used, not produced. All right. Green energy is a problem. It doesn't work when there's no wind. It doesn't work when there's no sun. Therefore, it doesn't work when the lights go out. It doesn't work on a calm day. We saw what happened in Texas. You want green energy? That's great. It's actually more expensive. Okay, we're dealing with that in Massachusetts because these morons put a bunch of windmills in the ocean they're probably killing whales and sharks with. And we had no choice. It's on my energy bill now. That shift will help Spain end its reliance on energy imports, but it also brings its own challenges. Every national grid in the world will need to spend heavily to upgrade distribution systems, connect scattered renewable generation, and ensure it is balanced. Well, they do rely on energy imports. Maybe not energy itself, but all of that material they have to import from China. The semi-precious minerals that make solar panels, that all comes from China. Ironically, a lot of those semi-precious minerals, one of the most abundant mining operations for the stuff to make solar panels, an industry which China dominates, happens to be Afghanistan. Oh, wait. Oh, by the way, since we gave Afghanistan to the Taliban under Biden, China's been doing nonstop mining in that country for those very same minerals. Coincidence? Sure. Won't go into grid balancing. Did intentional connections, international connection cause a problem? The widespread failure was extremely unusual. However, there have been previous examples in 2003. The problem with the hydroelectric power line between Italy and Switzerland caused a huge outage across Italy for about 12 hours. In a 2006 German power overload caused outages as far as Portugal and Morocco. Yeah, that's a big problem. Interconnection between countries is vital for sharing clean energy, but it also creates new pathways for failure to spread quickly. So this is all just nonsense. This is all just busy talk. Really, the problem there is someone flipped a switch. It caused a major disruption in the power grid, which overloaded some systems and shut it all down. A lot of these will shut down automatically. Those are the safe falls as everything shuts down. All right, back to China. Where does this come in? Okay, well, let's talk about China. All right, how much influence do they have over the infrastructure? Well, let's take a look. This is a blog. This is an article from PortugalBusinessNews.com. 2023. What is China's influence on Portugal's power grid? This is going to blow your mind. Portugal News. What is China's influence on Portugal's power grid? Portugal's critical infrastructure includes a national power grid operator, REN, who we just talked to, that is privatized with China's state-owned company, State Grid Corporation of China, SGCC, as the largest, say it again, as the largest shareholder. So let me say that again. A Chinese state-owned company called CGCC is the largest shareholder in REN, which is the national grid operator for Portugal. On Monday the 8th, that is an auspicious number in Chinese culture because it sounds like the word to generate wealth, China's Vice President Han Zheng inspected Portugal's REN R&D Center in the presence of Portugal's Secretary of State for Energy and Climate, and Ana Fontoura Gouveia. Han Zheng is the vice president of the People's Republic of China since 2023. On Monday, Han Zheng vowed to strengthen the cooperation on energy and innovation between Portugal and China. He added that, quote, China commends the Portuguese government for its firm efforts to promote the energy transformation and to support the development of the new energy industry, which China dominates. China's vice president declared that China's strategic partnership in Portugal's energy grid was a prime example of a win-win cooperation between China and Portugal. I would argue it's a win-win between China and China. Portugal's Secretary of State for Energy and Climate, Ana Ventura Gouveia, stated that Portugal-Chinese relations were stable and that the existing bilateral cooperation yielded fruitful results. She added that Portugal is willing to further deepen concrete bilateral cooperation with China, especially in the fields of energy and innovation. Okay, so basically the key takeaway here is REN, which manages all the power, that's like National Grid or Con Ed, in some of our states, this is for the whole country of Portugal, is 25% owned by China. In Portugal, its national power grid operator, REN, has members of Chinese state grid that sit on the board of directors. REN's board of directors has 15 members, out of which 3 are nominated by China's state grid. The overall management of Portugal's national grid operator, REN, is attributed to the board of directors, while its day-to-day management is entrusted to the executive committee. We can't get into the executive committee too, but that has a bunch of Chinese Communist Party members on it as well. And by the way, these 3 that are nominated by China's state grid, the state grid is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. They're members of the Chinese Communist Party. And so people know, if you don't know China that well, the Chinese Communist Party is the dominant party in China. There really are no other parties. There's some notional parties, but they literally have no power. It's the Chinese Communist Party. And they're so powerful that they tell the National Congress of China how to vote, which laws to write, and then they accept them. So there's no opposition in China. It's all run by the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, so don't let the words get in the way here. So, all right, so there we have it. That's another takeaway. 25% of Portugal's grid is owned and operated by China. Okay, let me share this one. I'm not going to read this whole article to you, but there's a good graphic here, and there's some good points here. So let me just read some of the high points. This is from Three Gimbals, Omen Secure, Geopolitical Threats. This is another think tank. I already checked out who runs them. It's pretty plain vanilla. They do a lot of stuff for investment companies. 21 April 2025. Chinese investment in European energy infrastructure threaten long-term strategic ability. China's energy investments in Europe are about more than money. They deliver influence. So by owning power grid operations, it gives them operational access to the lifeblood of Europe. By owning the battery gigafactories, this gives China supply chain leverage. Their petrochemical ventures give them political leverage. As we know, oil rules the world. And by owning the nuclear power plants, they get the technology transfer. And that is a key word right there. When you're studying the Chinese Communist Party, especially when you're studying them as a threat, as I do, I am a China hawk all the way. Technology transfer is a key phrase you want to write down in your notebooks. Okay, so this is in the description on Rumble, so you can pull all these links. But what China is doing is they're essentially embedding themselves into Europe through many ways, not just through the energy sector, but we're focused on that tonight, so we'll stay there. What they do is China gets into the energy business through investment. One of the key investments is the China Three Gorges Corporation, which you saw in my video, buying a 22% stake in Energias de Portugal in 2011. Through this stake, CTG gained influence over the EDP's extensive wind, solar, and hydro portfolio across Europe and beyond, securing both access to markets and opportunities for technology transfer that align with Beijing's broader industrial ambitions. And keep in mind, too, when you are hooked into, through the energy internet, as China is, When you're hooked into the European system or any system through the electrical grid, you can get more than electricity. You can actually get data. So if you have like a home security system or Blink cameras, those all run through the grid in your house. So data does transfer that way too. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And at this level, we're talking about a lot of data, but you're also getting a lot of data in terms of which section of a country might be firing up more and firing down less. Also, if you think about this, and this is just a theory, but AI, the race for AI dominance in this world. Okay. One thing we've learned about AI is that it needs a lot of power. Those servers need massive amounts of power. There's some California neighborhoods complaining that since Meta installed their big AI facility, the neighbors of the surrounding neighborhoods don't always have power. In some cases, don't even have water because the Meta facility is drawing so much power for their AI. So think about this: you're China, right? You want to win, you want to hold leverage, you want to have the upper hand in the AI race. You're already interconnected to the electricity and power in Europe through at least on the data side of things. If you can control power use or suck power from the EU to China to fuel these massive AI farms, Europe will never be able to catch up, or they'll never dominate China, which will allow China to continue to, not someday, but continue to, as they do now, control the European Union in everything they do. So where does China come in? They're already in. And that's what I wanted to get to. Now, do I know China did this? No, I don't. It's a theory. But interestingly, what I discovered today was the first thing I did today was go and say, okay, what happened since? So what happened yesterday before the big power outage in this ongoing trade war is essentially this. So yesterday at this would be about, so it's 1:30 p.m., so this would be about 6:30 European time. Panic slowly. China's cancellation of 12,000 tons of U.S. pork sends loud message. USDA reports this is the largest cancellation of U.S. pork since May of 2020, early in the COVID-19 pandemic. Economist Brett Stewart says it's time to panic slowly, but the story is not over yet. So China is the biggest consumer of pork in the world. By the way, China owns Smithfield. You should check out Phil Legensky at Daily Caller's article that I was featured in about Smithfield and China's ownership of it. Okay. Anyways, China's the biggest consumer of pork. So this is a big deal. Okay. This is their number one food. Import from all countries used to be the U.S. I mean, pork is to China what tofu is to the West Village, is what beef is to most Americans. It's a big deal. It's what chicken is. I mean, this is their core meat staple, their core protein staple. So they canceled 12,000 tons of pork that was coming from the U.S. Now, if you cancel 12,000 tons of pork, you better quickly have someone else who can send it to you. What if people don't want to send it to you? What if you jump the gun and you can't replace those 12,000 tons of pork? What if you say to Spain, hey, yo, we just canceled our pork from the U.S. Send us some pork. And Spain says, well, maybe we don't want to get involved. You guys are getting kind of belligerent, you and Donald Trump. They say, send us some pork. And Spain says no. So then what does China do? They shut off the lights. Just a theory. I'm just saying. So what happens today? Magic. Spanish pig farmers eye boost in exports to China. Wow, what a coincidence. Okay, so they canceled 12,000 tons of pork from the U.S. Spain's lights go off and then mysteriously go right back on and no one knows the cause of it. And then today, all of a sudden, after weeks of negotiation, Spain's ready to export pork to China. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify this, but I mean, these are just facts. These are timelines, and that's where we start. We collect the facts, we put them in a timeline, but this cannot be ignored. When I look at these things, I zoom in, I zoom out. Okay. Food is a huge import for China. They have the worst farming and ranching. It's just ironic that all of a sudden Spain gets their lights back on and says, woo, okay, we're going to sing you some pork. Not saying the two are connected. I'm just saying it is an awfully huge coincidence that suddenly they're willing to play ball and send China some pork after China canceled imports of pork from the U.S. Okay. Again, take it as you will, but it's something to think about. Okay. So that's what I think happened. I think my theory on the case is that China flipped the switch via their cat's paw, which would be Ren in Portugal. They said, Portugal, draw demand down to zero. This overloaded the system of output from Spain. Boom, the lights go out. And to regulate that, you have to have a balanced system. So Portugal would have to bring it back online through the energy internet, which is connected directly to China. So China doesn't have to be physically grid connected to Europe to control who turns the lights on and off because they control Portugal. Okay. Maybe they don't, but I'm pretty sure they do, and they seem like they got a pretty firm hand on Spain as well. So that's my theory of the case. Before I go to the comments, let's just really quickly talk about my knee. Okay. So, and this has to do with one of my sponsors. One of our sponsors is Native Path Collagen. Go to getnativepath.com/Daily Clout, which is the parent channel I work for. Scan the barcode, get some collagen. I got my collagen right here. So my knee, right? Here's what happened. I started taking collagen religiously 6 months ago. Okay. Because Native Path sent us some samples. Now I just have it on subscription. So now I purchase my subscription and it comes in all the time because I take collagen every day. What is collagen? Well, collagen is kind of like the stuff that holds you together. It's that protein that kind of really helps your tendons, your teeth, your joints, your hair. Yes, it does seem to improve hair growth and the thickness of your hair. It did for me. It's kind of like the mortar, as one sports medicine doctor I had on my show told me. It's kind of the mortar that holds you together. So a long time ago when I was a paratrooper in the U.S. Army, I hurt my knee. It's hard on the knees when you jump out of planes. I hurt my knee. I kind of didn't tear the ligaments, but like a rubber band, I'm going to stretch it too far. It doesn't go all the way back in. That's kind of like the situation with my tendons. Plus I had a torn meniscus. They did surgery, knee's fine, but every now and then, if I land on it wrong, it will just crumple. And I go down for the count. It's the most painful thing. It's blindingly painful. It's the kind of painful that's so painful, there's a really wonderful moment where you feel really euphoric. That's how painful it is. So I go out with my son, who's becoming a real hell of an athlete. I go out with my son. He wants to play some ball on Sunday. And I go for the big, glorious catch, and I come down on that knee, and boom. Oh, my God, I thought I tore it. It was blindingly painful. I kind of limped all the way home. I've got to say, though, within 12 hours, I wasn't feeling any pain. Now, I don't know if that has to do with collagen, but I can say the last time this happened, which was about 7-8 months ago when I stepped off a sidewalk the wrong way, it was blinding pain. I was limping for a week. My recovery was so quick this time, I can only attribute it to collagen. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we have to investigate that too. But before we do, get yourself some collagen. Your body stops really producing collagen around 25, 30 years old. You need collagen. You have to have it or you become brittle and broken, possibly bald. So go to getnativepath.com/dailyclout, scan it. They do have a 365-day money-back guarantee. I cannot recommend this company enough. I love Native Path. They're a great company. We've had the owner on a few times. And they're so excited about their product. They're so transparent about their product. So Naomi and I and some of the people at Daily Clout have been doing this collagen thing nonstop. We even got Emerald Robinson to do it, and everyone just can feel the results of it. I'd like you to try it and tell me what you think. You're not going to be sorry. They even have a Facebook page you could go, and people have recipes. I made a collagen eggnog with bourbon at Christmas. It was wonderful. I put it in my coffee. I put it in my baked goods. I probably take too much collagen if that's possible, but I figure why not? So again, getnativepath.com/Daily Clout. Go and scan the barcode and get yours today and tell me what you think. You could always let us know right away, and we'll put it up. And if you have a huge success story, we'd love to feature that too. And Native Path loves hearing that from us. So hope you get yours today. I do want to say they also have, one other product they have at Native Path is Native Hydrate. I talk about this stuff all the time. I'm almost out. This is a very sad day for me because I used to take Gatorade and now I take this. Native Hydrate is electrolyte and amino acid drink. Supports hydration, recovery, muscle health. It's all natural. The ingredient, it's very carb free for the most part. Has all your vitamins and minerals. I'm just looking at the label here. And this is what I take every morning when I wake up. Put it in some water, shake it up. It's delicious. I actually need to order more because I'm almost out of it. But that's Native Hydrate. You can find that all on getnativepath.com/Daily Clout. Get yours today and mention Daily Clout when you do. And here's to your health. All right. Okay, so let's look at some comments. We talked to Liberty. I'll put her up again. Liberty was on earlier. Thanks for coming by. Yeah, I know. I was laughing when they said atmospheric phenomenon. And by the way, Ren has already disputed that claim. The actual grid operator said no, it wasn't. So, okay. And so Wise says, he's saying that with the older man, the interview with the older man at the 16-minute mark is doing everything to avoid stating that it could have been due to a slow solar flare. I'd be curious to know if it was due to powering up AI systems, which, from my limited understanding, require massive amounts of energy. That's a good point, and I kind of touched on that, but I didn't think of it as a actual cause. That's a good point, and Wise Diogenes, you should look into that. And if you find anything, let me know. And if you do a report on it, you even want to come on the show and it's well sourced and everything, I'll have you on. I want to hear about that because that's a great lead right there. And I kind of touched on it. I'm surprised I didn't connect that dot. We need to look into, is there a massive AI farm that's powered up somewhere on the grid, which seems to be across the entire EU, but primarily in the Iberian Peninsula, that maybe sucked all the power away and caused that disruption. Great point. Okay, and he says, not sure, long ago. No, you're right, Wise. I saw your other comment. You're absolutely right. Cousin Ernie, my actual cousin, he's back. Good to see you. Gotta love the interconnected grid of across Europe. I know, it's terrible. It really is. Okay, across Europe. It's a major vulnerability, security-wise, too. Major vulnerability. Rare weather phenomenon. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly right. The rare weather phenomenon. They were actually saying fluctuations in the temperature. First thing I went to was weather.com. There were no fluctuations. Taka Angular, the managing director at Nira, a software provider. Oh, I put that up to... Okay. And if someone wants to investigate that software provider, I'd be really curious about that. You can send all these things to Brian at dailyclout.io. I won't steal your work. I will cite you. I'll just put your report right up. I just would have to review it first. As part of the agreement with China's assistance with infrastructure project, those countries agree to CCP surveillance systems. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that always goes with the territory. You're absolutely right. I mean, kind of tech exchange falls under that as well, but you are absolutely 100% correct. And, it's also human networks as well, because there's always Chinese engineers and Chinese workers. the national intelligence law of China states that every single person has to contribute to the defense of China, which means if you go abroad and you're Chinese, you are required to download all your photos, contacts, everything of everyone you met abroad. So basically everyone in China is a spy. So I do not think this is I do not think this is an accident, but something nefarious related to digital ID and money. They shut it down to reset it. That's a good lead too, Zoe. That is a good lead too. If you want to look into that, and talk about it, I am more than happy to feature anything you find on this show. So that is a great lead. So we got 2 additional leads, or alternate theories to my theory is, we have the AI somewhere drawing power, like an AI farm drawing way too much power, disrupting the grid. That came from Wise. And then Zoe brings up a really good alternate theory of, the digital ID and money resetting the system. That is a great point. And if someone could look into that, that'd be great. I can't. The show's called Investigate Everything. I'm one human being, so I can't possibly investigate everything. But if you can help me, we together can. So, and I mean that in a non-communist sounding way. But Zoe, if you want to look into that, I will feature it. I will amplify it. You will get total credit for it. I want you to share that. And I want people to get more involved in helping with these investigations. And if you need some sources, reach out to me, and anyone can reach out to me anytime. Just shoot me an email, mention the show episode when you do, so I know who you are. And it's just brian@dailyclout.io. Put in the subject line, question or lead reference episode, title. Okay. Make sure you're taking vitamin C with the collagen. Oh, Ernie, I take everything, dude. I mean, first of all, my 2 major sponsors are, Native Path and the Wellness Company. So the amount of vitamins I take, lots of vitamin C. But thanks, it's a good suggestion. Actually, the Native Hydrate has enough vitamin C for my whole day, but I still take additional water-soluble vitamins as much as I can because, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, so I need all the help I can get. But you're absolutely right. And, really quickly on that note, I mentioned the Wellness Company. Wellness Company is awesome. Love the Wellness Company. You want to go to dailyclouthealth.com, dailyclouthealth.com, or scan that barcode. Guys, this is one kit. This is the Contagion Emergency Kit. The kit that is my go-to is this one right here, which is... This is the Wellness Company's medical emergency kit. What is in this kit? This is the blue one. And this is actually well used because it has everything. So this is the guidebook. What I like about their kits, they come with pre-prescribed medications. Let me just remove that image so you can see better here. So this is the medical emergency kit, which comes pre-prescribed with all these. These are prescribed to me. So we have everything in here. We have ivermectin, we have doxycycline, we have amoxicillin, we have it all. And then what's great is their guidebook actually makes sense. You just go to the guidebook and you say, okay, what do I have? Well, I have lung abscess, I have a bite wound, I have dental infection, I have diabetic foot infection, and then I'm probably going to take amoxicillin for that, and they have the dosage laid out in very plain English. This actually cured a major cold I had from that cruise I took with Mark Stein and the gang. It's just great to have it. And it's tick season. If you live in New York, especially, or Connecticut, there's tons of ticks. I've got like 100 doxycyclines. So if I get bit by a tick, I'm not worrying about calling, one medicine or some telehealth nonsense to get that one pill that I got to drive a half an hour to get. I've got 100 pills right there. I just pop that sucker and we're good. So again, go to the Wellness Company, get stocked up. Guys, look, if this is an attack, all right, let's say this is a warning. Let's say China or anyone, right, is controlling it. Let's say it's like Zoe says, it's about resetting it for some digital ID stuff. Well, if their people are seeking that much control over you. They want to control the medicine. They already do. What's nice about the wellness company is they're giving you, you're buying it, but it gives you the opportunity to stock up on critical things that you need that can keep a small problem small and not let it metastasize into a big problem. However, can you imagine a world where, like, here's a great example. I heard this story in New York during the pandemic where this lady's daughter got bit by a tick. She takes her to the doctor because you have about 48 hours if that tick has Lyme disease before you get Lyme disease. You got about 48 hours to get some doxy and you wipe it out. She goes to the doctor and they tell her, oh, we can't give you doxy, but you can try this new vaccine for Lyme disease. That's all we can offer you. That's all she was offered. I don't know what the lady did. This was in a checkout line we were talking. But that's pretty scary stuff. Like, you're possibly facing a horrible, horrible degenerative disease. And they say, yeah, no, we can cure you, but we're not going to because we want to try out our nonsense BS mRNA on you. They wanted to try this new Lyme disease nonsense on her. I told her what I did tell her. I said, I'm not going to ask what your daughter did. It's not my business. I said, but wait right here. Went out to the car, got my emergency medical kit. I said, this is doxycycline. Here's one pill. Take it if you want. You don't know me. This is my name. Try it out. She'll be good. She goes, no, I'll take it. And she took it. So hopefully I did a good deed and via the wellness company. So check it out. Scan that barcode. Check out all their stuff on there. They also have the bison organs, which I take for my multivitamins as well. My main multivitamin is their freeze-dried bison organs. Liver, heart, kidney. That's where all the essential nutrients are. And I feel actually younger and stronger since I started taking those like a year ago. I love the bison organ supplements and many, many other things that will keep you healthy and energetic, clear-minded. They have it all. Check it all out. At the wellness company, go to dailyclouthealth.com or use the promo code EVERYTHING at the wellness company's main website on checkout, and you're going to get a 10% discount as well, and you're helping support the show. But the biggest thing is you're helping support your own health, and you're giving yourself some freedom from the big medical establishments, as demonstrated by my stories, all true stories. So check them out today. Again, can't say enough about this company. Love these people. All right, back to the comments. So Zoe, make sure you take the vitamin C, and then funny faces from, and then and so you bring up a good point, Liberty. Yeah, I got to look into this real ID nonsense. Like, I'm a little surprised that Christine Ohm is like saying all of a sudden to travel in the United States via airline. Am I hearing this correctly? You got to have to have a real ID. And I just got a license. I don't want to have to go back and get the real ID. They started that nonsense in Washington, D.C., and I resisted it. Plus, I think it's unconstitutional to prohibit you from traveling state to state because you don't have, a real ID. What's wrong with the passport? What's wrong with the license? This is nonsense. I'm very, very wary. You guys know I'm MAGA. I support the Trump administration. But as American citizens, we always need to question things that don't sound right. To me, this sounds like BS, that it's protecting us from illegal immigrants who use fake IDs. I mean, come on. This is nonsense. And when I just came through customs the other day, coming back from Iceland, all of a sudden they have these fingerprint things now too. In addition to the stupid camera, which already took a picture of you, now they want you to roll your fingers and give them fingerprints. And both Naomi and we said to the guy, no, we refuse to do biometrics. You got our passport, that's it. And I got to say, the guy's like, so you're refusing biometrics? We're like, yeah. He goes, all right. Hands the passport back, in we come. They didn't put up a fight. So you don't have to give that stuff at customs. If you have a passport, that passport's valid, that's it. Until the laws change requiring that, you don't have to give that stuff. And don't. Okay, don't give it, because if you just give that stuff because you're in a rush or anything like that, they're going to want more and more and more. And, that might seem okay under like a Trump administration, but what happens when there's not a Trump administration and those controls are already in place? That's what you have to be careful with. So refuse, resist at all times. anything outside of the law. I think this Real ID thing is probably unconstitutional. I'm going to look into it. I have to look into it. I'm actually going to ask Naomi Wolf, my wife, to look into it to see, what we can do to resist it. Because I don't feel the need to go get another damn ID. I got too many IDs. All real. But you see my point. So thanks for bringing that up, Liberty 000. And if you have anything on that, you want to share it with me, you can DM me on X, or you could, again, shoot me an email at brian@dailycloud.io. Okay, guys, it is getting late, and I have to go for the evening. But yeah, let's keep an eye on this China thing, okay, with the energy grid. And if you go into the Rumble page, you're going to find all of the links to those sources that we talked about on this. And let me just show you really quickly here. Okay, so there we are. Just calling up the episode here. There we are. Yep. All right. So I'm just going to share the screen. All right. So if you go in there, just why is that not sharing? There we go. Okay. We're going to get an infinite screen here. But if you go there, please go here, hit that follow button. Okay. Hit that follow button. I need the bragging rights. I'm trying to beat my wife's audience. But the real reason I need you to hit that follow button right there is because it gets it out further and further. And the whole point of the show is to get information out and to hopefully learn from you and you learn from me. I was in the intelligence community for almost 3 decades, been an investigator. I have trained ways of doing this to get to the bottom of facts. Anyone that knows my work knows I go pretty deep and I find a lot of good stuff. And it's not just by searching, it's actionable. But you could go in here, you're going to find all the sources, okay, from this episode. I couldn't fit them all in, so I'll add more, or maybe I'll put this whole thing in a Substack, which is free. But yeah, check it out here. Go to, just go to the Rumble page. If you go to Rumble, just type in investigate everything, and it'll pop right up. I will share the link in the chat. Okay, put that for you guys. But yeah, please follow here, like it, comment, and you can also share anything here as well. Love seeing people on Rumble. It's better than when you're on X because it's just easier for me, and I really like the Rumble community a lot. Let me share the link with you for this episode. You can also go in there and find all of my episodes. I've covered a lot of different things. Great interview today with. I'm going to erase that, ignore that one. Great interview today with Calvin Robinson. He's a priest in Michigan who's just real freedom fighter, constantly under attack, and lots of good investigations here, lots of good guests. Need to get him back on for China. We got a lot of things going on. So go to investigate everything, hit that follow button, and let me know what you think of the show and what you might want me to cover. Okay, so there's that. All right, so today... Oh, that's not Naomi Wolf that posted it. That's me, I think. Yes, it is. Okay, so that's weird. All right, so today, what did we cover? Weird power grid. We've got 3 theories, thanks to Wise and thanks to Zoe and thanks to myself. Here are our 3 top theories for why the power grid. Massive need for energy. This is from Wise. Let me put you guys back up there. So Yep. So Wise, his idea is that, this may be a huge surge due to maybe a massive AI need. Maybe there's a new AI server farm over there. That'd be interesting to look up. Definitely someone look that up. I'd be interested to know. That's theory number 1. Theory number 2 came from Zoe. And these are all really good theories. Zoe says, maybe they were resetting the system to get some sort of digital ID and money thing online to reset it. Zoe, definitely share anything you might know about that. We want to learn more. That could be a whole episode. Same with you, Wise. So those are good theories. And then my theory is this is China carrying a big stick. due to pork negotiations with Spain and the US, as well as a warning to the rest of Europe that, hey, this could happen to you because you're all connected. Those are 3 good theories. We need to run them down. And remember, when you're doing an investigation, it's not about proving your theory. It's about eliminating. Try your hardest to eliminate your theory. And if you can eliminate your theory, then it's probably you're on the right path. If you try to prove your theory, you'll always find enough stuff to prove your theory is right. Start by trying to eliminate and challenge your theory. That's how you're going to get to the truth a lot quicker. And that's how you're going to cut through the kind of nonsense type of sources. So yeah, I hope to hear from you guys. I want to hear everyone's theories on this. Let's keep an eye on this. Let's get some historical research going on to, we need to dive into Sri Lanka's collapse about a year ago. That's important too. A lot of good stuff, guys. So, what can I say? Let me just end this by reading to you, really what the whole quote is from Unrestricted Warfare. That link to Unrestricted Warfare is in the description. I highly encourage everyone to read it. It's a little flowery. That's how the Chinese write, but this changed the way the Chinese do war since 1999, mainly due to them seeing our success in Desert Storm and Desert Shield. They say, and like they say at the beginning of this manifesto, the war god has changed his face. There's also one other thing today, too, and I've got to find the quote. And I'll tell you about that right at the end here. But let me just read the quote to you really quickly. I'm going to share this screen. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so this is from Unrestricted Warfare. And you can see here, title page, Unrestricted Warfare, Qi Lang and Wang Jiangji, Beijing, PLA Literature, Arts and Publishing House, February 1999. This was actually leaked, and it was really meant to be more like a massive internal memo. I found this copy online, which is, you could actually get this on Amazon too. But the key thing to this is they say the war god's face has become indistinct. So if I go back here to the quote, let me read this to you. This kind of blew my mind when I read it. Okay. Supposing a war broke out between two developed nations already possessing full information technology and relying upon traditional methods of operation, the attacking side would generally employ the modes of great depth, wide front, high strength, and three-dimensionality to launch a campaign assault against the enemy. Their method does not go beyond satellite reconnaissance, electronic countermeasures, large-scale air attacks plus precision attacks, ground outflanking, amphibious landings, airdrops behind enemy lines. The result is not that the enemy nation proclaims defeat, but rather one returns with one's own spears and feathers. However, by using the combination method where you combine different vectors of attack, a completely different scenario and game can occur. If the attacking side secretly musters large amounts of capital or money without the enemy nation being aware of this at all and launches a sneak attack against its financial markets, then after causing a financial crisis, buries a computer virus and hacker detachment in the opponent's computer system in advance, while at the same time carrying out network attack so that the civilian electricity network, traffic dispatching network, financial transaction network, telephone communications network, and mass media networks are completely paralyzed. This will cause the enemy nation to fall into social panic, street riots, and political crisis, as we saw in Sri Lanka. There is finally the forceful bearing down by the army, and the military means are utilized in gradual stages until the enemy is forced to sign a dishonorable peace treaty. This admittedly does not attain to the domain spoken by Sun Tzu, wherein, quote, the enemy army is subdued without fighting. However, it can be considered to be subduing the other army through clever operations. It is very clear who is superior and who inferior when comparing these two operations. This, however, is only a thought. A great quote for what happened, in my opinion. I do want to say one thing. This is a side note. At the end of this paragraph, they say, however, it is certainly a feasible thought. Based on this thought, we need only to shake the kaleidoscope of addition to be able to combine into an inexhaustible variety of methods of operation. They go into their methods of operation for attacking the United States. Atomic warfare, diplomatic warfare, financial warfare, conventional warfare, network warfare, trade warfare, biochemical warfare, intelligence warfare, resources warfare, ecological warfare, psychological warfare, economic aid warfare, space warfare, tactical warfare, regulatory warfare, electronic warfare, smuggling warfare, sanction warfare, guerrilla warfare, drug warfare, media warfare, terrorist warfare, virtual warfare, or deterrence ideological warfare. These are things that are being employed actively by the CCP against Western nations. They practically brag about them, and I'm happy to supply you with those sources. When they say shake the kaleidoscope, what they're talking about is you can throw all these different methods into a bucket, shake it up, and see what you come out with. And why not just use whatever combination you want or use them all at the same time? They use the term shake the kaleidoscope about a dozen times in this manifesto. Now, out of the blue today, I was watching Mark Carney, the newly elected leader of Canada, and my heart stopped. This guy is purely a globalist, controlled by others, now running Canada. He actually used the term today, the world stage, like something like the kaleidoscope of the world stage has been shaken. Like he used a term I've only heard used in unrestricted warfare. Says Mark Carney owned by the CCP? I don't know. Maybe he's just a big fan of the book, but I've never heard a world leader say that. And it definitely has the Investigate Everything target right on Mark Carney, because that blew my mind. And I even tweeted about it today. I couldn't believe it. So anyways, we'll keep an eye on the new leader of Canada. So we'll take it from there. All right. I'm going into that mode where I start rambling on, so I'm going to stop myself. Everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. I really, really appreciate you. I appreciate the time you take to make this show great. I do this show for you. I just enjoy the back and forth we have. What you guys send me are great leads. I do get a lot of mail from everyone, and I read it all. And I've gotten some great leads from you guys. So keep it up. If you want my advice on how to run an investigation, or how to start your own project, or you want to investigate something and put it into a format that people will read, I'm happy to help you with that. I have a lot of experience with that. Really, my forte is running intelligence operations and turning them into customer deliverables or intelligence reports that are actionable at what I like to call the stractical level, strategic and tactical. Think of everything as warfare. Okay, that's how I look at the world. And then there is no disappointment. Okay, but I do look at everything as warfare until I can prove to myself that it's not. Because the way our main enemies, the Chinese Communist Party, look at the world, and it says at the beginning of this book, under unrestricted warfare, everything is a battlefield and everyone is an enemy combatant. So with that, thank you for joining me. I will be on tomorrow at some point. We got a lot to talk about. And I will see you then. So this has been Brian O'Shea with Investigate Everything, researching and investigating the power blackout in the Iberian Peninsula. So green apparently is the new blackout. And with that, I'll leave you. Have a great night.